Hi, welcome to Frederick's Garage, your favorite location for the eradication of oxidation on your restoration or your transportation end, home of the Bel Airror, the resto-mod with the rusto-bod, my life-ruining welding project. In the last video, we had worked on the passenger side rear wheel well and we formed and fitted in a patch for the center. In this video, we fabricate and weld in the rest of the front portion of the passenger side rear wheel well. So stick around. For the front wheel well, I thought I'd start by resurrecting this piece that I failed on before. I understand the concept of compound stretching now as opposed to simply linear stretching. So I used a series of rounded hammers and beat this a little more closely into shape. It roughly, with a little grinding, it roughly fits this wheel well curve. And if we crawl under the car, it roughly fits this area as well. So next step, I think I need to knock close to 1 inch off of this because the piece I'm making is a slightly different shape. And even if I had the exact shape, this is still in the way. So we'll knock that back, see how well it fits or does not fit, and we'll keep going. Wish me luck. So here's first pass on the patch. It's just clamped in on one corner. You can see there's some airspace up there, a little bit of space down there. It does fit into this earlier piece reasonably well. So let's use our template, our wheel well template, and see where we're at. Obviously, the thickness of the quarter panel, the outer panel itself, will take up some of that space. Looking pretty good there. And down here, of course, the patch is a little bit short. It also sticks out this way a bit much. So I think if I change the placement of this angle here, I'll get me a little more meat out this way. I mean, worst case, I could splice into it when I weld on the return. But anyway, we'll keep at it and see what we can do with this one without starting over completely. Up underneath, it looks pretty good from this perspective. Probably gonna butt weld it, but again, not sure. Gotta tap it in so it lines up with this a little bit better. Gonna trim some of this away. So just an evolutionary process here. Obviously, we need to continue down and tie it into here, but that's going to be for another piece, one step at a time here. Off we go. So I've moved this peak like I mentioned. So let's see how it fits now. Also, I put it on the outside of the original panel instead of the inside. So let's see how it fits now. We tuck our template tight into this rear corner and across the top, and look at that. A lot closer. We don't have as big a gap on the lower right side there. So I think that's pretty close. Obviously, I got to do a little more trimming to get it to fit better. I got to work on building the other portion, but we're getting close. So I've beat the V into this using the sandbag and a ball peen hammer, and it's got a shape that's pretty close. There's a low spot right here in the original panel. I used the vise, just the gap between the jaws, and tapped that in with a ball peen. And this is fitting up reasonably well, except for down here. It doesn't curve down to the floor rapidly enough, and it is a little far right here from the edge of the fender or the quarter panel. So what I'm going to do is stretch this section in here. I'm sorry, shrink this section in here, which should point this a little closer to the rear axle, change that curve a little bit, and also draw this end of the patch down a little closer to the shape of the original wheel well. Anyway, kind of a hokey approach, but it's what I got to work with. So I do have a deep throat shrinker stretcher and the shallow one. Shallow one's easier to set up, so I'm gonna run with that. So here we go. All right, let's get a shrinking. All right, let's get this over to the car and see how we've made out. So I've got the outer panels installed, and I'll try and show this on the recording. It's a little tough to see, I imagine, but you can see how the patch fits fairly close to the wheel well curve. Should be enough for me to weld a lip on there. It also fits pretty tightly to the original panel and the middle section of the replacement. So when I say replacement, that's the piece that I made for the wheel well over the center section. So it only continues down a short bit. It fits pretty closely at the top. Of course, as I've been fitting it up, I'm fitting it up on the inside of the wheel well now instead of on the outside, as in the last video. It just fits better this way, and it's closer to this dimension here. So I'm gonna put a couple placeholder screws in, and then I can take the outer panels back off and either begin to fabricate the next piece down or work on the lip for this section. Anyway, time for lunch. I'll figure it out while I'm sitting there chewing. So I've got the first piece fitted in. The challenge is trying to locate everything for the lower pieces. So what I did is I put the filler panel in there, filler or reinforcement panel, and it took a little while to figure out the best place for that. Here's the original that was pretty badly rusted, so I wasn't sure of the length, and couldn't exactly mock it up where it had been before. So I think I have it pretty close. Another consideration here, the filler panel comes through to here and is welded fast. I put a screw there just to hold the corner so I can move it in and out from the back. I just have it temporarily held with this vice grip pliers at the back. So I think that gives me a pretty good benchmark to continue the lower portion of the inner fender well. The problem though is the front panel keeps moving on me. I put it on, take it off, and it's a moving target. I end up having to refit the skirt, reclamp it at the bottom, etc. So what I think I'm going to do is tack weld the two panels together. That way the wheel well shape isn't going to change, and I pretty much know where I want to put the thing, and that'll help me have a nice consistent foundation to build the inner fender well. Obviously I'm going to be taking the panel on and off, but I'll be doing so in its entirety. That way the two halves won't be moving. So let me get the welder fired up and we'll tackle that. So here we are, welded up. Obviously I haven't welded it the whole way. Welded up the underside a bit and ground it just a tad so I can continue to fit the fender skirt without interference. The important part now is I can mount and dismount dismount and remount the quarter panel without having to realign everything. And next step, of course, is to continue in here fabricating the remainder of the inner wheelhouse. let's get on it. This is one of the trickier pieces I'm going to have to make for the lower portion of the inner fender well, in part because I want to mimic this folded edge, and also I need to have a flange that goes around here. This is just a placeholder piece. So what I've done is I've cut out a piece of cereal box, and I've indicated where I need to shrink it. And what I'm going to do is cut it to shape here. I'm going to then fold the edge here and begin the shrinking to put the curve in this way. I'm just trying to meet this edge here. I'll weld a flange on it after I get it shaped properly. I'll do that with the quarter panel off. And with that, I will simply break this edge here with a gentle edge, because it is kind of a soft edge there. And I'll have this side of the patch ready. Of course, I need to do a little final work on the floor in there. I need to cut off this little piece. I need to bend this tang around for welding the inner panel on. Anyway, one step at a time. Try not to get too far ahead of myself here. But anyway, let's get this cut out and start doing a little bit of shrinking and preliminary fitting and see if my approach is going to work. Once again, I think by cutting a flat piece, bending the flange in, and then shrinking the edge of the flange, I think that will give me the curve that I want along this facet here. It's less of a curve at the top, more at the bottom. Maybe that's where hammer and dolly, maybe that's where sandbag comes in. So we'll know shortly. So I've got the piece cut out, and I've got the fold area marked, and I've taped up the pattern to approximate where we want to put the shrinking in and get the curve, at least on the lower portion. It's not exact. It's probably going to be tighter than that, but it's a place to start. Also, you'll notice this edge of the flange is slightly thinner than out here. It follows the filler panel that's in the quarter panel, and this is where I need to do a lot of the shrinking on this end, so it's easier to shrink a skinnier edge than a fat edge. And also, as I shrink this, it's going to expand this way, so probably the edge is going to come out about equal with respect to this line here. Anyway, next steps, here we go. Here we have the piece set up on the brake. So let's see how we make out. Okay, let's get the wrenches and undo this. Unfortunately, this brake requires wrenches to tighten and loosen the mandrel. Here we go. So we've started shrinking, but you can see that we're not shrunk enough yet. The pattern is shrunk a little tighter on the outer edge there, and even at that, I think more shrinking is needed. So we're getting a lot closer to our pattern, so let's mock that up on the car once more. Obviously, I need to put a little bit of a bend up here, but let's focus on the bottom first. We're going to use the sandbag to put a little shape in up here. What I've done is folded the patch roughly where I have the crease, and then marked in here. So we'll put a little bit of a deeper groove at the top, fading on down to here. It's a little bit of a crisp bend. In fact, up here I might start it in the vise, and then I'll just beat a little more into it. Well, since the vise is in use with the shrinker stretcher, I think we'll use our handheld vise here. We all have our vices. Now let's just get a little bit of curve in there. There we go. So what I'm going to do is beat a little bit of shape in there, which might help with the stretching. Need to stretch it a little, shrinking. Shrink it a little more into there. And of course we need way more shape in here because it's a tighter curve, of course. So let's get one of the beaters. We do have quite a selection here. So let's see, start with a dull beater down here. So that's a little bit bigger ball than some of the ball peen hammers. So it is putting some walnuts in there. We'll have to planish those out ultimately, as much as we care about an interior panel. And up here we'll use a sharper ball or tighter ball. Then in the middle, we'll use a little bit flatter ball. I like this one. Did I mention some of my ancestors were blacksmiths? Not sure how many rusty cars they worked on back then, but lucky for them. All right, let's put a little more shrink in here. Okay. All right, I've shrunk that pretty severely. So we have almost a 90-degree there, which I think is what we're shooting for. And as I shrink this, it's also pushing that edge, upper edge over, which is good. Let me find my template, see how we're doing. Okay, so we're actually at the point of the template, maybe a teeny bit further, which I anticipated we'd need. So I'll go into the car, fit it up, see what we got. I'm having a little trouble getting this edge up into the wheel well properly or out towards the fender lip. Basically, I need to knock a little bit off of this corner here to help draw it in. I think I've got the curve about right at the top. Obviously, it was a rough shaped pattern, so we'll do that. I may have to extend the shrink a little bit this way as the patch moves in, but that was sort of anticipated. There's plenty of extra on this end, so no harm, no foul. I'm gonna use the bench grinder to knock it off down to about that marked line there. Otherwise, though, I mean, this section fits in real nice, so I think I have this angle and this curve fairly close. So we're getting there. So I've ground that corner down, rounded this a little bit more with the shrinker, and put the piece back in, and then I ran a marker up there, and it looks like this is the part that's the most proud, that's interfering a little bit, preventing it from going in a little farther. So let me grind that in a semicircular fashion, and we'll see if that doesn't draw the top a little closer. All right. So I've got it fitting pretty well, except for one dimension or one edge. So as you can see, this edge is a little far from the fender well. I'm probably going to cut it off, but even so, that needs to come down a bit. So I think I need to stretch that. So I'll put this edge on the stretcher and see what we can do. I'm hoping the stretcher makes it go out that way a little more. Let's see. So I've got the patch screwed in. It's not too far off. Obviously I need to planish it, but I mean, it fits pretty well top to bottom. A couple challenges though. First of all, the mount for the fender skirt, which bottom of it locates about here even with the trim, at least according to the other side. I need to change my patch to make it run a little more parallel to this surface, so I have a little more room in there for this and for the lever on the fender skirt that mounts. So I've beat this patch every which way till Sunday, shrunk it, stretched it, still not fitting right. So what I've done is put remnants of the old quarter panel back on so I have the rough shape of the wheel well. I've used these tile leveler thingies to hold it in where I hadn't prepared it with Clecos. And I'm gonna work on something else now. Just clear my head, change topics, and maybe I'll come back to this. Well, I'll have to come back to it, but right now I'm hitting a bit of a dead end. So let's keep going on other things. What I'm gonna do is weld up this little edge of the floor in here and smooth that out, cut off this return on the inner structure, and that way I'll have enough space to grind everything, and then I'll weld a new piece on because that is kind of wonky. Anyway, let's get on that and see what we can do with that mess. Cheers. Well, I'm still having a little bit of trouble shaping this piece. Plus, as it turns out, I've cut a little short at the top. So I think what I'll do, there you go. It's probably a 3/8 of an inch too short at the top on the right side there. You have to weld a piece back in. What I think I'll do is focus on building this section, and maybe I'll just force a bend into the middle of it, sort of fake the two-piece approach, maybe run out to here as possible. And then maybe I can work on this piece, cutting it about here, have a little less to work with, maybe have a better chance of getting something in shape that works. All right, let me get on that. So I've taken that outer piece that I've beat the heck out of, and it's now too short. And I've managed to get a couple of screws in there fitted underneath the new piece that we just put in to trim it a little shorter to fit it in there behind. And what I'm doing now is getting ready to make a template, a cardboard template for the fender lip. The little strip of metal that's gonna be my welding point. So let me get on that. Marker, scissors, back to kindergarten arts and crafts here. Here we go. So I cut the template that it fits along this edge, cut the outside off, and then I cut the inside off just to make it a little more manageable. But you know, the fender lip is beveled, of course, so the piece needs to be thinner, the template needs to be thinner. So what I've done is I've gone back to this metal form that I made a long time ago when I formed the fender lip, and I put it along the outside edge of the patch, the perspective patch, the template, and that shows where the bevel starts. So that allowed me to mark where I need to cut this pattern. So obviously I will cut the pattern before I cut the metal and try the pattern up in there and see how we make out. So I've used tin stiffs to cut out the fender lip, and you can see it looks pretty close to the template. I thought about cleaning it off before I cut it out, but it was a lot easier to see the marks. And I like following a fat marker line because I know to cut just on the inside of it as opposed to a fine scratch on there when I'm cutting something so thin and so precise. I used tin snips, and I used the left curve tin snips, which, you know, when I started on this end, it's a gentle left turn. Anyway, I'm gonna strip the paint off now. Have to wear gloves, but we'll use a fiber disc for that. Let's go. So there's almost no room to get my head up in there to weld. Certainly not enough room with a mask on. I have in the past taken off the whole axle and brake assembly. It gives me another 4 inches or so of clearance, but what I thought I'd try are these auto darkening welding glasses. That combined with a welding cap, I should be adequately protected, at least to get a couple of tacks in there. This is the first time I've tried these, so I'll let you know if my eyes start burning. Here goes. So the glasses worked okay, but the angle was such I couldn't get in there to put the tacks in, other than at the very bottom, and to do so I took the nozzle off just to be able to have at least a little bit of clearance. Obviously it's a crap weld because the shielding gas couldn't get around it, but got to do what you got to do. If I had a swivel head MIG, then a MIG torch, then that might have helped, but I just have this fixed head one now, so if this sucker ever wears out, I think the flexible head would be the way to go. That would give me a little more, excuse the pun, flexibility. So the long and the short of it is I had to notch this to get it to fit a little bit better. And then also this part was in too far close to the frame because I really didn't have enough room to mount this bracket. The bracket would have stuck out like that and it needs to be in there tight. So I actually had to cut this and put in a little pie-shaped piece. It's welded, still have to weld the inside, have to dress it up, but I did connect the two pieces. I'm gonna unscrew them and work on them off of the car, but I do want to potentially butt weld them, so they're not quite ready to go in yet. Anyway, let me put the quarter panel on for the umpteenth time and see how we're looking. In particular, like I said, I had to slit this again to pull this down a little bit. Anyway, the rear was a little easier because I could actually see and get in there from the inside, so I could work against the quarter panel. Here I have to kind of put it up, remember where it's high or low or in or out, pull the quarter panel off, address it, back on. So anyway, been at this most of the day, but nobody else is going to do it. So there you have it. All right, here we go. We've got the quarter panel put on one more time. Let's take a look with the mirror, see what we got. So here's the inner wheel well. You can see all the welding I did. Let's try and get this up there a little bit better. Okay, so the black piece has been there for a while. That's already dialed in. There's the new fender lip coming around. You can see I put a relief slit in there. So we're gonna pull that down a little bit before we weld that up. Continue on down, you can see where I had to weld in the pie-shaped piece when I pushed that lower portion out. So I'm gonna have to take the patch off and grind that out so everything fits nicely. And down into here, seems like we're doing okay. The lip is still a little wide right here. What am I trying to say? So the lip is nice and narrow beneath the bevel or inside the bevel, but coming on down here, the lip is still a little wide, so I'm gonna have to narrow the lip a bit, get it to fit down in the bevel a little bit better. But we're getting close, gotta give it that. Also, where are we here? All right, so this piece, this is the front mount for the skirt. It's gonna go roughly where this hole and this hole are, and we can see that it fits almost flush. I mean, ideally it would come in about that far. I can knock a little bit off the thickness of this. I can also bend it a little bit too, but till I grind that weld out, grind the weld down, I think we're gonna be on the right track. We're a lot closer than we were before I pushed that last patch out a little bit. All right, let's keep at it. I'm gonna try and heat shrink this one section. Here's a tool I don't use all that often, my oxyacetylene torch. Got my hammer ready, and I got my quenching cloth ready. So let's see what we can do here. Boy, didn't realize I'd lost my touch. There we go. That nice, reasonably neutral flame there. Let's find my goggles. Okay, there we go. Made a little bit of acetylene soot, but so be it. All right, here we go. There we go. Let's see. Ah, that flattened out nicely. Don't know if you can tell, the bulge that used to be there isn't there quite so pronounced. I think I'll give it another hit right about here. And I think we'll call it. Then we'll work on the edge. Let me repeat this process. Okay, this time we've got the torch lit with a little fanfare. Let's focus our heat up here now. All right, there we go. Okay, I think we've knocked that section down nicely. There was a pronounced hump there. Now it's just kind of round like the rest of the profile in that area. So I'll trial fit it, see if that makes any difference, and then we'll get on attacking this section next. A little concern there though is I've done so much welding, I'm not sure how conducive to flattening this is going to be. I guess that might be where the torch comes back into it. Good thing I didn't get rid of that. So I've made a cut with the cutting wheel, and I've cut along here. I've tapped it in. I've reformed this curved shape, and just gently with hammer and dolly. So if we hold up our template, we can tell that things are a lot closer to how the template suggests they should be. Speaking of templates, let's take a look at our wheel well template. Obviously, this covers the sheet metal wheel well, quarter panel wheel well, not the inner, but it is somewhat of a guide. So you can see on the back there, we're pretty good. On the front here, not so much. We're hitting up here. So I'm thinking that I probably want to cut these welds and put the lip on the inside of this instead of on the lower edge. So let me mock it up against the quarter panel off of the car and see how it's falling, and I'll make that determination. The concern is if I don't get this pretty tight to the lip of the quarter panel, when I go to plug weld this as the final step of the installation, I'm going to have some problems. So that's why I'm focusing on, maybe hyper-focusing on getting this as close as possible. Desperate times call for desperate measures. I've got everything clamped into place, and I'm going to weld it right here on the quarter panel. I'm going to have to tip it into my lap because things are slightly unmanageable, but that should give me the correct references. So let's get on it. Not going to try and film that because it's going to be kind of hard even for me to see. I'll show you how I make it out afterwards. Here we've got a couple of tacks in, should be enough to hold it. Let me take it off and see how we make out. So quarter panel's remounted. I don't have the filler piece in place, and frankly I can't put that in with the quarter panel mounted. I have to set it in ahead of time. But in any case, that's still movable, so I don't think that's a limiting factor. Quarter panel fits nicely. No fighting like I had yesterday when the patch stuck out a little bit farther. Let's take a look. I guess we'll start at the top. Okay, so here's where our patch starts, and looks pretty good. I'm sorry, using these vice grips to pull the edge in just a little bit. If I can pull them in with the vice grips now, then I can pull them in later when I want to weld. That is plug weld the quarter panel on. So here's how it fits without the vice grips. So we can see we have a pretty nice, the vice grips helped push the flange out, until I get it welded in permanently off the car. I may have to bend it out a little bit manually, but the general shape is spot on. So happy about that. We have the piece temporarily screwed in for the moment. Not sure if I'm gonna butt weld it or lap weld it, probably butt weld it down here. Don't know about lap or butt up there. Problem is I can't get to the top to cut it nicely to butt weld it. So to be determined. But one other consideration here, as I mentioned, it was pushing the quarter panel out too hard before. So let's see where we stand. Here we go. Try, oh, here. Let's get this light in here. So we'll take this piece of cardboard and we're gonna try and do this seated. Gonna run the piece of cardboard down between the fender well and the, well, this isn't showing up on film. Anyway, the net of it is when I ran the piece of cardboard down between the quarter panel and the patched wheel well, it had enough space for the cardboard except for down at the very last point down here. So I might actually grind that or tap it in. But otherwise, everything's fitting up well. I'm quite pleased. After yesterday's debacle of not fitting, I guess tack welding it against the quarter panel, using the quarter panel as the buck, was the hot tip. Same with the welder, that has a hot tip. All right, enough. Cheers. So today we're going to be welding up and then potentially welding in this front inner wheel well patch, which goes up to the top there. So we'll get started by first taking the quarter panel off, which takes a few minutes. Let's get on it. So I've got a series of stitch welds around the outside, except where I blew through where there's a couple of boogers. Anyway, the stitch welding process works pretty well. I'm going to weld this up from the inside, but first I'm going to grind it off a little bit on the outside here while it's still attached. So we've got the front slit and tacked in. Still not quite sure how I'm going to splice it into the original panel, but I think what we do is we test fit the quarter back on at this point, make sure everything fits tight to the wheel well so we can potentially plug weld it. Next step, of course, is to bring this down, assuming everything's okay, and weld it up from the inside, weld this lip up from the inside, and take it from there. So using the mirror, tough to tell on camera, but I can tell that that fits pretty tight. So I'm gonna pop this off and weld that and clean it up on the inside. And it is fitting a little looser up here while I have it clamped on the flange. The goal though is to weld it against the car and then spot weld or plug weld the flange after, which will help pull everything tight. So the fact that this is a little teeny bit loose here without all the bolts in place or screws in place, not a major concern. I think we're well on our way. So after I get that welded up and cleaned up, I'll work on figuring out how to weld that in. Might be pulling the axle and brake drum and backing plate off of this side so I have a little more room to sit in there with my fat ass. And of course, then I'll have to do the same approach to the back there. At some point, I'm gonna have to weld in the center section of the patch of the wheel well as well. So all in good time. As Fitzy of Fitzy's Fabrication says, one step at a time, don't overthink it. I know I'm prone to suffer from analysis paralysis, so I'm trying not to go down that rabbit hole. All right, let's get on it. So in here in the wheel well, I'm gonna do what I call a modified cut and butt. I'm gonna cut the new panel flush with the old panel and begin tack welding it up to about here. And then I'll reinstall the outer panel, the quarter panel, to make sure everything's still on track. The question is, there's a little bit of movement up in here till I weld that in place. So maybe I'll do a couple of tacks with the outer panel in place and then try and do a cut and butt in here. I can get to most of it from the outside with clamps up to about here. So we'll see what happens. Play it by ear. Just tack it, of course, so I can cut it loose and move it if need be. So the modified cut and butt is working pretty well. I've cut it up just past the first screw and welded it, tacked it, I should say, and now it's cut up to almost the second screw. Here's what it looks from the back. What it looks like from the back side. You can see how I peel that up, and looks like we have decent penetration. Obviously, I have to go back and clean things up, but right now we're just trying to get it in place that I can remount the quarter to make sure that everything's still in place before I put too many welds in. So let's keep at it and see how we do. So I've completed what I would call the quasi cut and butt. I've done a slit up here to reshape that a little bit to accommodate this this middle piece right here. It looks like it's pretty good. Unfortunately, I couldn't get the angle right with the cutting disc, so I cut it a little wide there. I'll have to use my spoon, maybe weld that up from the back. The original panel's fairly solid, so I shouldn't have too much problem with blow through. Right now, it's time to try the quarter panel back on and see how things are fitting. It is possible that stuff moved a little bit as it pulled tight from the weld. So we'll see. I think what we would do would be adjust the edge here to offset that. But anyway, won't know till we get it up there. So the quarter's fitting really well. I can feel up in here that the lip is lining up nicely. It's don't know if you can tell in this light, but the inner wheel well patch here, the middle wheel well patch here is lining up nicely with the one I just put in. So while the quarter's on, I'm going to put a couple more tacks in here, and then I think I can take the quarter off and weld this up and finish it. Obviously, we're going to take our time so we don't put too much heat into it, but let's get on this, try and complete this phase. Getting that piece welded in will be a good step forward. So I've got it all welded up. Clamps in the way a little bit. Let's see, Cleco's still on here. I can unclamp it with Cleco on. So, oops. Yeah, there we go. Not too shabby, not my finest work, but the old metal is a little crusty and does blow through in a few spots. So yeah, that's what the grinder's for. I'm sure I'll have to come back and weld up a few pinholes, but there we have it. Nothing's terribly warped. Everything's fitting reasonably well. So I'll call that a win. So we've got it all welded up. Done some grinding, some sanding, some shaping. We've done our second round of pinhole chasing. Haven't ground those down yet. Here's what the outside looks like. Anyway, not so worried about the outside, but anyway, it's presentable, I'd say, and it's not so proud that it's going to get in the way of the quarter panel, the outer quarter panel. So I think so far a success. I'll take it. I've ground down the last of the welds to cover the pinholes, and I think we're gonna call this done. Obviously, I'm gonna clean this up and paint it, but for all intents and purposes, I think the front of the wheel well is finished. So let's just get a glimpse in here. Obviously, I have to tie it into the center section, but we'll do that when we're a little closer to welding on the quarter panel. So looks like everything's pretty nice and clean. We'll get some paint in here. Followed a lot of the original contours. So I'm happy about that. And I did cut a little relief up there, right there, to better match the curve on the piece for the middle section. So pretty much pleased with that. Got the groove, the fake groove there. You can see a little bit of the weld of the other patch. I'm not super concerned about that. I might use a little silver colored filler. I don't like using Bondo where wheel wells and stones and gravel hit, because it just chips it and then you have the white dots and stuff. But if I use the aluminum all metal, or maybe I'll use a little bit of lead, I may ultimately smooth that out. But for now, I think done is done. Cheers.